Welcome to the Body and Beyond podcast with Alice and Gina.
A podcast sparking discussion on all things health, mindset, fitness, goals, and motivation.
We strive to help you to boost your confidence, to take the lead in your own life, to back yourself, and to step into your full potential. Body and Beyond is proudly sponsored by The Seed Cycle. The Seed Cycle is a beautiful female-founded Australian company. Seed cycling is a natural methodology that you can use to support your menstruation and your ovulation, and it can even be used to support your hormones through perimenopause and menopause. Use the code BODYANDBEYOND at the Seed Cycle website www.theseedcycle.com.au. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Body and Beyond podcast. Good morning, Alice. Good morning. Today we have the incredible Sally Grant. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Gina and Alice.
Good morning. Sally is an incredible dermal clinician. And Sal, can you kick us off with telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into the world of skin and nourishing from the inside out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the skin industry. This is my 20th year. I did a diploma of beauty therapy when I finished school. And that kind of led me to realize there was more to the skin than just, fluff and relaxation. I wanted to understand how I could get long-term outcomes for people with, suffering with conditions, inflammatory skin conditions like acne, sore, red skin. So then I went on to work for a plastic surgeon in sort of more the aesthetic space. And I completed a Bachelor of Health Science, graduated in about, I think it was 2009. And I worked in that space for about 14 years. So a lot of laser, chemical peels, probably in more of a space of hurting the skin to generate an outcome rather than nourishing the skin to get an outcome. And I guess towards the end of my time there, I started to get very curious around there's got to be more to it. We can't just keep hurting the skin and getting this regeneration, because I think we could be actually in the long run doing more harm than good. So we're getting a quick fix, but not necessarily longevity in the health span from the skin. Tracing back to why I got into skin in the first place was I had acne as a teenager, and knowing how it felt when my skin cleared up and that feeling of confidence and relief when my skin wasn't red and sore and bumpy and spotty anymore. And I'd tried the antibiotics and they didn't work. And I tried the topical creams from the doctors and they didn't work. And eventually Mum took me along to see more of a holistic practitioner that put me onto skincare that was very calming and nourishing, and I guess drew some awareness to lifestyle factors as well. But it's really been in the last, I would say, probably since having my kids, but more so my third baby, Vinny. He's 2.5. So through my pregnancy with him, I really threw myself into the holistic world, integrative medicine world, and I guess really started to preach what I practice rather than practice what I preach, because I was already living this very clean, nourishing, intentional life. And I thought, wow, if that's giving me outcomes, I really think I should extend this on to my patients and clients. And so then I sort of changed the way I did my consultations, and I changed the questions I started asking people. And I think especially after what happened through 2020 to 2022, with the world really changing how we looked after ourselves and what we deemed important in our lives, that also made me realize that people want to take control of their overall health, and they want to understand what's going on with their bodies, and they want to play a part in their health journey. So yeah, the way I do things now is very much a partnership with my client. It's not me saying, go home and do these things. It's, hey, let's work out what the goal is and let's work backwards from there. And let's look at these contributing factors to what might be making the skin behave in a certain way. So that's a long explanation of why I'm where I am now. I'm super passionate, obviously, about what I do. And I really enjoy the work I'm doing with people at the moment, or mainly with women, but with people at the moment.
It's really interesting, I find, how a lot of the experts that we talk to who've been in industries for so long, they go through a very similar process of like doing something for a long time or doing something a certain way, and then starting to not question things, but question things, or go, I wonder if there's another way, or I wonder if this actually is the best way. And then, yeah, it's just a similar thing, I think, that both Gina and I have seen across people who are just experts in industries for so long, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think probably a common trait that we might share is curiosity, and not just accepting the status quo and not continuing to just run on a hamster wheel and getting similar outcomes, but not, moving past that. So, yeah, I encourage my clients and patients to be the same. I really want them to question. I want them to go and question their GP when they're being put onto oral contraception for their skin, or I want them to question their GP if they've got pain after having an IUD inserted and their symptoms aren't improving. And I think it's a real gift to keep that curiosity, even 20, 30, 40 years into your profession. There's always going to be evolution of the way we can do things and understanding. And sometimes the science to back what we're saying isn't always ready and on a white paper, but the clinical practice and the clinical outcomes that we see, it counts for something. And yeah, I love that most people that you're speaking to are sort of experiencing the same type of curiosity and the same evolution. It's really exciting for health and wellness as a whole, I think.
It is exciting that people are being a bit more proactive and wanting to, like you're saying, Sal, like your clients are open to this kind of side of things. Do you think there still is a large amount of people who are wanting quick fixes though? And
Yeah,
I don't know, I think there's still
absolutely.
so many people who aren't quite there yet. Hey, so it's like, how do you get this message?
Yeah, and I think you would see it in the coaching world as well, that people are like, I want to get from point A to point B, but I'm not comfortable with the discomfort that comes in between that. I think I've made a really conscious effort to try and attract like-minded people into my practice. And I try and be very transparent with the sorts of questions I'm going to ask people and the sort of things I'm going to talk to them about before they walk in the door. And I'm very comfortable with not being every single client's cup of tea. And, I will always follow up with a client if I haven't heard from them again after an initial consultation. But for the most part, after the consult, people feel relief because they feel heard. I'm not going to sit there and gaslight them. I'm going to educate them. And also I'm going to commit to being a partner on this journey with them. So yeah, quick fix definitely isn't my vibe. I don't tend to attract people that are after a quick fix. And if someone walks in the door that is looking for a quick fix, I might not catch them again. And I'm okay with that, because they're on their own quest for that outcome. And I guess I've learned too, it can be really hard work to try and convince someone to do something that they don't want to do. And I would rather put my energy into people that are so committed and driven and all in, that want to learn, that want to have the best kind of outcome. And that is so satisfying, and that makes up for the maybe the 10% of people that I don't see again. But for the most part, yeah, I do attract people. And, it can be really hard and sad as well that I attract people that have sat in front of their doctors and pleaded for an answer with their skin or their health overall, and really not being given that support. So it feels like a really unique space to be in. And absolutely, there's still people out there that want a quick fix but can't quite comprehend that their digestive health could be why their skin is behaving the way it is. But I guess what I try to do in bite-sized chunks is deliver these little bits of knowledge that they can kind of go, yeah, you're right. Actually, I don't have a bowel movement every day. All right, so if we work on that, maybe that will be an outcome that will then deliver clearer skin. And there's a bit that goes on in between that, but, that's where this curiosity comes in, because they see the curiosity coming from me. I want to know all about them. I want to know how their bowels are moving. I want to know how much sleep they have. I want to know, are they part of a community where they feel like they belong? All of these factors contribute to their wellness as a whole. And I think more and more people are open to understanding that about themselves. Yeah.
I'm so glad you started to touch on those things. But
So what would you say, and I know everyone's so unique and so different
Yeah.
and they've got different circumstances, but what would be some common things you see in clinic or in practice when it comes to, like you said, digestive health or people's ability to flush out toxins, or what do you see?
It's the biggest thing. I think most of my clients who walk in with acne, so I guess coming back to my initial consultation process, I will have a conversation and then look at their face and see what zone of the face we're seeing breakouts. And often before I ask questions, I'll have a little bit of an inkling as to where there could be some trouble, depending on where the breakouts might be. So let's just say the chin, for example, can relate back to rectum health. And so that might suggest that there's some constipation and this lack of, proper emptying of the bowels daily. But yeah, I would say commonly I see really slow moving bowels, lots of IBS, and that kind of term is such a blanket for we don't really know what's wrong, but you've got a bunch of symptoms that we're just going to give this label to.
And for those just listening, Sally used quotation marks and bunny fingers, IBS.
So, I'm really sensitive to those types of diagnosis because people often feel very attached to this label that they've been given. But yeah, I think the first thing I'll sort of work on with people is, and when I say people, I'm talking about, I guess, specifically acne at the minute, because it's mostly what I'm seeing right now, is getting a bit curious around, okay, how can we get your bowels moving every day? Do we need to refer you on to chat to a dietitian or a nutritionist, or can we just, start to bring in a little bit of psyllium husk or kiwi fruit or something like that or more water to get the bowel kind of moving? So that will be the first thing that I'll generally touch on. And then from there, we start to talk about endocrine disruptors and how different chemicals in our environment, what's going on to our skin, what we're breathing in, what we're ingesting, how can we clean that up a little bit, and how can we support the body so that, yes, we can have these beautiful detox pathways that aren't so burdened that the only way out is through the skin. So I know you've had amazing practitioners on here talking about environmental toxins and things. Filtering drinking water is always at the top of my list. If they're not filtering their drinking water, then, let's talk about how we can chlorine and different chemicals that are in our drinking water, because it's a really big factor, in our liver and our gut are all affected by that. And then I think probably from there, understanding what an endocrine disruptor actually is. So, a chemical in our environment that mimics our own natural hormones but can throw out that balance of hormones in our own body. And so I might also then, coming into the detox and the flushing out, give them some tips or teach them how to do a lymphatic drainage on the head and neck area if they have got sort of reds or inflamed acne. And kind of any person, like I love doing lymphatic drainage on myself. You'll notice that when you wake up in the morning, you might be a little bit puffy and you can just give some nodes a little bit of work, and it really helps to support the body to get that moving, along with hydration. I mean, the list goes on, but I mean, trying to sort of nut it down and be really like, what are the things we could do right now and today, or take homes from this conversation that we're having, is look at bowel movements. Are they happening daily? And a question that I always ask people, is it enjoyable? Do you sit down, have a really, beautiful movement? Do you stand up and think, that felt satisfying, I feel like I'm done, on with the day? The number of times people say no is really common. So that's when we start, to look at that. So I think, bowel movements, and that's even before we get into like gut health and your food intolerances and things like that. But bowel movements as a first thing. Probably hydration. I think people think they're drinking enough water. But, we know that hydration is really important for lots of functions in our body, including flushing out of toxins. So making sure they're hydrated, and then, getting in some lymphatic drainage practices and gentle movements and stretching and breathing, and making sure people are breathing down into their tummies and really activating their whole system to really connect to what we're trying to do. But again, my answers are really long, Gina, and my explanations, because, it's hard just to give a short explanation on what is the magic here.
Of course. in your professional opinion, how do you address hydration? Or I know everyone's different and everyone's individual, but what kind of guidelines do you give people?
Yeah, so I guess filtering tap water is really important. If I feel like someone is really struggling, or they do lots of physical activity, exercise, that type of thing, or if they say, oh, I drink all this water and it just goes straight through me, then I'll talk about, electrolytes and how perhaps they can replace those electrolytes, or even starting the day with warm water, a bit of lemon juice, and maybe some Himalayan rock salt in some water, and just have that to start the day, so that hydration is actually reaching every cell, the tip of the finger, the tip of the toes. We're really taking it into the cell and using it instead of it just sort of passing through. I find that that's a good thing. And then I just encourage people that are really struggling with hydration, or new mums or athletes, to make it lemon juice, water, and sort of the salt up into ice cube trays. And then they can just pop a couple of ice cubes in and put some warm water in. And if you're feeling a bit under the weather, you can add some ginger. You can make it into a tea if you want to. But that's kind of the first way that I get people to improve hydration. If I feel like it's an oil problem and that they're deeply, maybe they're a bit deficient in omega-3s or some good fats in their diet, I might suggest some supplementation. So I use either sea buckthorn oil or an algae-derived omega-3. That can be really, really powerful as well. And I think we're getting better, but for such a long time, fats were demonized. And so there is a generation of women that are so fearful of putting fats into their body, and it's really not serving them, because we need fat for hormonal health and that deep tissue hydration and function, and for cellular health. If we want our cells to function really effectively, we need good fats in our diet. And omega-3s are also an anti-inflammatory. So most of us can have a bit of an imbalance of omega-6s and omega-3s. So we can bring the omega-3s up to be the most prominent fat that we're getting in. For skin conditions that I see, like eczema, even rosacea, even some acne sometimes, you can have people that just have the most inflamed, red, angry skin with lots of breakouts, and they're dry. It's not because they've got an oil problem. It's because they've got perhaps some other deficiencies or some immune function troubles happening there.
And what about when it comes to volume or quantity of water?
Look, I don't go into that too much. I guess when I'm guiding people, I don't like to be, I'm specific in certain areas, but I feel like when I give people numbers and quotas and things like that, it can be very overwhelming. So I'm a very intuitive eater, drinker, those types of things. So I tend just to encourage people to do what feels right for their body. And that can feel a bit sort of open for some people. And then they will ask questions of absolute amounts. But for the most part, it's going with what feels right. If you're thirsty, have a drink. You're feeling like you want to increase that. Which might be different to your world and how you guys kind of coach, because I feel like maybe with you guys, you're giving really specific amounts, perhaps because people are trying to reach certain outcomes.
I love that, because it is, I guess you're asking them to pay attention to how they're feeling, signs and symptoms, skin condition. Are you thirsty? So it's really tuning into that more intuitive side and looking at clues. And also if someone is overhydrating, like you said, and their electrolyte balance might be out. So I think that's a cool, much more personalized way to, rather than being like, have 1.5 liters or have 3 liters.
It just doesn't. And maybe that's because that's the sort of person I am. If I think, oh, I haven't had 3 liters of water today, that's such a bad thing. Like, I don't want to open the gate for any negativity to come in here. I just want them to feel good with those things that they do, because people are hard enough on themselves as it is. I don't think they need my voice in their head saying, drink more water, or, don't do the thing.
Also, their activity level, they sweat differently, so even because I believe, I guess some coaches might calculate it based on their body weight and say, well, this is the amount of water you should drink per day, but then that also doesn't really take into consideration how individualized it can be as well. Some people are really sweaty people, and it just, I am,
absolutely.
like, I do a workout that's not even hard, everything just sweats out of me, but then you've got people who don't sweat at all. And so it's just like you said, it's such an individual thing. And I personally, even though like I do nutrition, and we do sort of like water intake is a big part of that. I'm exactly the same as you. It's not like you need to drink this amount per day because this is your body weight. It's very much like listen to the cues, give maybe like a bare minimum that you'd want to be drinking.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's more of a like, see how you're feeling. If you're thirsty, make sure you've got water access near you, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
like you said, quality water. That's
quality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things that I probably haven't touched on is this, I mentioned like intuitive eating and drinking, but I find so many women that sit in front of me, there's this disconnect between mind and body, and trying to actually work out that our body speaks to us. When you eat a certain meal, how do you feel? Do you feel gassy, nauseous, unwell? And then actually putting those links together to go, oh, this is my body saying to me, actually, maybe gluten's a problem, maybe dairy's a problem, or maybe, peanut butter's a problem. I don't know. It's just trying to encourage women to sit with themselves and feel, what is that inner voice telling you? Because often they've sat in front of other people that have told them that voice is wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. I'm the professional. You need to listen to what I'm telling you. And every week I meet women who have experienced medical gaslighting, and it's really devastating, and they lose themselves in this, like, but I thought, I really knew what was going on. I presented it to my medical professional. They told me I was wrong. Now I'm confused. And, I know we're only talking about water intake here, but I think it's got to come back to those simple things, those little practices of, how does it feel when you drink a liter of water? All right, cool. Then let's apply it to other parts of you in your life and kind of going from there.
How about any tips you have around ingredients or treating or nourishing the skin from the outside in?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this question earlier today, and I think my biggest thing is, yes, active ingredients and key ingredients for nourishment of the skin are really important, but probably my big message for people is what not to apply to the skin. Because, you could have a beautiful antioxidant serum that has all these peptides and amino acids, but it could be formulated with propylene glycol and artificial fragrance and harsh acids. And so then we're kind of doing this tug of war of like, oh, well, it's claiming to have good ingredients, but it's also got these nasties that then the body's got to work against to try and use these good ingredients. So my philosophy is probably more around, what that product doesn't contain. Again, I'm a little bit left of center in comparison to a lot of other people in the skin industry, that I don't push acids, I don't push harsh ingredients. Certainly I use them on occasion in the clinic. Some of the products that I recommend might have a little bit of acids, but I'm more into enzymes because they will only generate an outcome or a turnover from what's ready to come away from the skin. So that's probably one thing with red, sore, inflamed skin is, let's look at how you're exfoliating it. Let's leave off the granular exfoliation that scrubs and hurts and could give microlacerations, and let's step more into a gentle enzyme that you can still kind of, sorry, my light's just gone off. You can still kind of layer or enhance an enzymatic exfoliation. But for the most part, it's the enzymes will do a really beautiful job of just taking away what's ready to come away. In terms of, vitamin A is a big one that people love. I use an ingredient called retinaldehyde, retinal rather than retinol. Retinol can be a very sort of acidic kind of inflammatory kind of ingredient. And again, it depends what it's teamed with. But the reason I like to use retinol is it's only got to go through, think of vitamin A, the molecule, as a Russian doll. And with each layer that comes away, we're uncovering a more active version of the one before. And basically what we're trying to achieve is getting down to the little molecule that our skin cell will recognize, which is retinoic acid. So retinol is only one, Russian doll layer away from this retinoic acid. So using ingredients that the skin doesn't have to work too hard to utilize, because those ingredients have to be metabolized by the skin so that it can be used. And I just think if we keep it as simple as possible, there's less work for the skin to do so that it can focus on, you know, the skin cell turnover happening regularly and the hydration levels being really beautiful and just this general homeostasis within the skin, rather than putting things on that the skin has to defend or unlock or work hard to utilize. Absolutely, you know, things like vitamin C and hyaluronic acid and all of those things are really beneficial and helpful for things like pigmentation and hydration. But, you know, I might have a client in front of me that says, oh, I'm using all these hydrators and I use hyaluronic acid every day, but my skin still feels really dry. And it's coming down to, you know, how is that product formulated? And I'm not trying to poo-poo hyaluronic acid because it is beneficial, but it is a water-loving ingredient. And when it's sitting on the skin surface, it's looking for water either in the atmosphere or the skin, and it will bind with that. So if there's not lots of water in the atmosphere, which, you know, Canberra winters are very dry, then it can pull it from the skin a little bit, and that can kind of leave people feeling a little bit dry and inflamed and that sort of thing. So I don't get it right every time when I'm prescribing ingredients for people, but most of the time, you know, we're using a combination of things like shea butter and, you know, glycerin is often in lots of body moisturizers and things like that. But yeah, it's probably more making sure you're using good quality ingredients as well. I think in the skincare industry, you can be paying a lot for skincare and it not delivering for you. I guess I tend to recommend, you know, clinical skincare ranges, medical skincare ranges. The range, I work with one particular range in my clinic, and it is a holistically formulated system that has both internal support products and topical skincare. And the philosophy there is there are no endocrine disruptors. Most of it's oncology friendly. You know, and terms like vegan and, you know, all of these terms get thrown around. When it comes to a skincare product, yes, those things can be really important to people, but it doesn't tell me how effective or, you know, efficient it's going to be when it comes to healing your skin. But yeah, lots of nourishment and thinking of these products as like food for the skin and energy for the skin so that it can function really, really well.
Lovely. What about tallow balms? Because we know that they're kind of trending at the moment. Well, I've seen them everywhere, so not gonna lie, I actually bought myself some. So I'm curious to know what you think about it.
I'm definitely interested in the sorts of outcomes people are achieving with tallow because, as I said before, you know, I'm so particular about what is left out of products. And from the different tallow products I've looked at myself, and I've bought some for my family to use as well, they don't have, you know, preservatives, endocrine disruptors, fragrances. They tend to be a fairly clean, not too many ingredients and that type of thing. So, you know, I think, great, use something that's as close to nature as possible. I will say I've had a couple of people using it, and the outcome that I found when using it on the face, if they're not cleansing it off properly, then you can kind of get this little bit of a build up and perhaps, you know, some breakouts from that. But every skin type is so different. And a couple of my kids suffer from eczema, so I bought it to try on them, and it was okay. When I put it on myself, I won't lie, I don't like the smell. I know that there's a very like beefy kind of smell about it and like a fatty kind of smell about it. And maybe that's just me and my sensitivity to the sort of smell of it. But yeah, I don't think it's a harmful product, but use it with observation. And if your skin starts to do things that you're sort of like, oh, it wasn't doing that before, and you feel like it's maybe not helping, then maybe it's time to review. But if you're using it and you're not seeing redness, itching, you know, breakouts, that's wonderful. And how have you found it, Alice? Have you been using it on your face or your body?
On my face. Well, I kind of replaced it with I used to have like night cream that I would use every night. I just replaced it with a tallow balm, but mine does have a little bit of like it's a natural ingredient, but just something to take the smell away.
I think that's the one that I've got as well. There's actually a Canberra brand, and I've seen them at a couple of markets, and so I bought a pot. And yeah, I think this one was particularly because I put it on my kids before they go to bed. I thought, oh, I don't want any like exciting fragrances in there, so that it was all very calming. And yeah, so I think a little bit of essential oil, again, it's if you've got broken skin, sometimes an essential oil doesn't feel good. But yeah, I think they can be, I think all of these things can be very restorative and healing because with the intention that we use them as well. So, you know, if you're putting this product onto your body and you feel like you're doing good for you, that's a win. That helps with the bigger picture of, you know, and it sounds really big and outlandish to say like, you know, emotional regulation and nervous system regulation. But if you're using a product that you believe is good for you on your body and it doesn't have those nasty ingredients, then I think that's really a really lovely process as well. And I'm big into the rituals of self-care. And it's probably a bit of an overused term, self-care, but I think we all can be a little bit better with the intention in which we do things. And yeah, if you know that you're using something that's quite clean and it's feeling really good on your skin, then I'm not going to sit here and say, no, you shouldn't be using tallow, because that's what's working for you. So that's great.
I find like you only need such a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit too. Just goes such a long way.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like my skin just feels hydrated, and I wake up in the morning and it just feels like hydrated, I guess is the word, because
Yeah.
I would typically feel a bit dry, probably my skin, if anything. So yeah, I guess I did make that change. Probably the night creams that I was using before, I was trying to use obviously low tox. But this, it just feels another level, right? Because you look at the ingredients, you're like, well, there's really nothing in here.
Definitely.
So yeah, it feels good to use it, I guess. I'm enjoying it.
Beautiful. And Sal, from your perspective as a dermal clinician, how about sun protection, skin protection, SPF? How does all of that play into your world, in your professional opinion?
Yeah. I am not anti sunscreens, but I do suggest that people use them with caution and become aware of the types of ingredients in their products. I think the sunscreen industry is such a big industry, and in Australia, obviously, we have a really harsh climate that requires us to use sun protection. Probably the biggest thing I'll remind people is that there's more ways to protect themselves from the sun than just applying a cream to their skin. So if they're not having big, long periods of exposure, I might suggest that they use a hat or seek shade where possible. Or if they have a very compromised skin, so lots of broken skin, breakouts, red, inflamed skin, I might suggest that they use or avoid using a particular cream on their skin for a period of time until that heals. I like physical sun protection, so definitely looking at, you know, zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, those types of things that are more mineral based that sit on the skin surface rather than chemical filters. I have a couple of brands that I recommend and use in the clinic that are really clean and really responsibly formulated, with a lot of awareness around the harm that some of these ingredients can bring to the skin. I think also we draw on our own experience, don't we, with these sorts of things. And personally, I don't tolerate sunscreen very well. So, you know, I will get breakouts, I will get red, rashy skin. I've definitely had, there's something that can happen with certain chemical filters where it can actually elicit a phytochemical reaction or a photochemical reaction. So you put the cream on your skin, you go out into the sun, instead of those ingredients reflecting or diffusing the sun's rays, those ingredients actually start to attack the skin, and you end up with hives, rashes, itchy, sore, inflamed, not sunburn, probably a sunburn as well, but this really negative kind of outcome from that experience. So I guess it's the awareness around making sure you're not using ingredients that are going to elicit this kind of phototoxic response. And it can be commonly seen in little kids as well, you know, toddlers and school-age kids, where their immune systems might be a little bit different. Yeah, so like I said, I like sunscreens that have not too many ingredients, that are responsibly formulated with awareness of what nasty ingredients can do to the skin. What I also do recommend for my clients is I'll often recommend a pressed mineral foundation, so a powder that has some titanium dioxide, so that they can, have a little bit of coverage and use a product that's not going to encourage breakouts and that type of thing, while still having a little bit of sun protection. So, like I said, I'm not completely anti, but I like to sort of just present a couple of different options. And most of the time when I explain to people, sunscreen's meant to be applied on intact skin. Most of the people that I see do not have intact skin because, they've got acne or, a compromised barrier because of rosacea or perioral dermatitis. So I'll say, look, either just apply it to the upper part of the face or the parts of the face that aren't affected or that the skin is intact, or let's leave it off. Particularly this time of year, it's a little bit easier to say, let's leave it off until we have this healing underway, and then we can look at introducing it back in. But let's observe what happens when we bring it back in as well, because we want to make sure we're finding the right sun protection for that person. So, yeah, I have to try not to project my fears around sun protection onto my clients too much. But, yeah, for the most part, people get it and they'll sort of say, actually, you're right. Every time I use this sunscreen, say 3 days in a row, I do get a breakout. Or, and then again, it might be coming back to, all right, if you, like I had a client earlier this week and she's a PE teacher and she's really fair. She's not quite a redhead, but she goes in the sun, she burns, she freckles. So she wears sunscreen every single day. And I'm not going to tell her to stop that because it's necessary for her skin type and her profession. But I said, let's look at a more, friendly version that doesn't have nasty ingredients. And let's just make sure that when you're cleansing your skin, it's all coming off and you're starting with a really clean slate so that there's not any of those ingredients that are still on the skin when putting on your night cream or when you're hopping into bed.
Love that. Thank you.
So
I was going to say, Al, do you have anything else you want to ask Sal?
Oh, no, I think just to wrap up, I guess really my question would be, so for anyone who is currently going through something with their skin journey, what is your biggest advice? And they're listening in, maybe they're using products or they're trying to see the doctor. I know personally, some of my clients, even recently, the doctor's just been like, go on the pill, that'll fix the issue. So, I mean, what's just your general advice for someone right now who's struggling with their skin?
I think seeking out advice from an educated professional that understands that skin is not just what is going on topically, that there can be hormonal, gut, environmental factors. Understanding that, stress and what's going into our body can actually really impact the skin. Occasionally I'll work with naturopaths as well to sort of do some functional testing or refer to an integrative GP. So I think for those people, seek out help from someone that fits that criteria, and might go through a couple of professionals before you find the right person for you. But my qualification is Dermal Clinician, and Dermal Clinicians are all over Australia mostly. But, like for me, I do online consulting as well because I'm fairly unique in the way I practice. So I will have people, seek me out from different parts of the country to have conversations around what they can do with their skin. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I probably see too is people have done all this research online or all this, I saw this on TikTok and I saw this on Instagram and I follow this person and they said that. And it's like, there's so much noise. Let's just focus. Okay, what's going on? What's the goal? What have you done that maybe hasn't helped? And let's look at what we can do moving forward. I think lots of us are in this state of like constant low-grade anxiety around these things that we're trying to do for our skin, and that can be really stressful and have like negative flow-on effect. So yeah, finding someone that can kind of guide them and hold their hand, and someone that will sort of weather the storm of, all right, we've started some new skincare. Perhaps there's a purge that's going to happen. We sort of have to push through that, and understanding that what's has to come out often, and just equipping themselves with a good support team. And look, I refer to all sorts of people. I refer to dietitians, clinical nutritionists, menstrual health coaches, EFT practitioners, naturopaths, Reiki healers, spiritual healers. I refer to all sorts of people because often it's not just what's going on topically. There's often other aspects to that person and that condition. And I really believe that as individuals, whether we've got things going on with our skin or not, we need a bit of a team around us to sort of, I have an osteo that I see once a month because I love working out and I want my body to feel really good. I've had 3 babies and my pelvic floor needs a little bit of help. So I try and encourage people to really engage with those professionals that are going to help them get that outcome. And I quite often will liaise with those professionals for that person. Actually, one thing that I don't think I mentioned as far as constipation and bowel movements go is I will often refer to an osteo for pelvic floor assessment and release, because sometimes the problem might not be gut health, the problem might be an overactive pelvic floor, and that's why people aren't going to the bathroom as regularly and as easily as they could be. There's so many little complexities in our bodies that they're so amazing and fantastic with how they function, but I really do believe that we need a team to just, it's like your car, you take it in, you get it serviced every few months and it's running really well, and our bodies are no different. We need that support and that reset and all of that type of thing.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you, Sally. And do you mind telling our listeners where they can find you if they are interested in getting in contact with you?
Yeah, of course. So on Instagram, I'm Sally Grant _Dermal Clinician _. And then I also have a website, Sally Grant Holistic Skin Health. And I consult out of a little clinic in Canberra called Her Matters. And I'm also online for telehealth consultations as well, because so much of my work is lifestyle and internal support and topicals. There's a lot that we can do without face-to-face consultations. And I think that's really exciting because, again, it gives the power back to the client and patient to make some really beautiful changes. But yeah, that's how you can work with me.
So awesome. Thank you so much, Sal.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
No worries. We'll see you in the next episode, guys.
Bye.
The Body and Beyond podcast is for information purposes only. This podcast does not constitute advice or services, and the statements and views of the hosts and guests are not medical advice. The information provided should not be used for treatment or diagnosis purposes. Please discuss any information from this podcast with your healthcare professional before making any changes to your lifestyle.